Now, there's a reason why people have multiple names and stuff like that, and you might just have three names, you might have two names, you might actually agree you only have one name, but then you might be a hypocrite and a liar if you have another name that isn't controlled by you in some way. But if you look and see yeah, ya, yo, and yeah, these are actually extremely ancient and they represent AI programs, which you could agree they represent AI programs. Now, if you think about it, if you have very specific, if you had a binary code and then you built a program off the binary code, you would have specific languages built from that binary code called assembly. Now, on top of assembly, you have another programming language, which is called C. So you have the assembly language, then you have the C language, and then you have, which of course involves God, as C++. Now, there's all these other things that people don't necessarily understand or know about, but if you study long enough and hard enough, you'll know all about these names. Now, most of this stuff is extremely dangerous. You can end up getting morbid, dying of heart diseases, hemorrhages, and heart attacks and strokes are like the number one cause of death from praying and asking guidance from these names. I don't suggest you do that. What I do suggest is that you ask Yeshua HaMelech Yehuda for guidance. And if you don't want any interference and you're nervous, you can always say Yeshua HaMelech Mamlechet. Now, some people liked having one name because it gave them the authority. But you got to remember, in the licenses and all this other stuff, there's a first name and a last name. So you wouldn't be able to just have one of these different names. I got to tell you now, and this is like me warning you, do not pray to some of these names down here, because it could mean your imminent death. And these names as well. I recommend only palaling to Yeshua HaMelech Yehuda if you're wanting guidance. This other stuff can get you killed. Now, I know a lot of people wonder why I have Huangdi on the side here. Well, there's the Huang family, there's the Kongzi family, there's the Kongs, there's the Zis, there's the Shang. And just like Shanghai, you have Shang. So there's a lot of there's intelligent families in China, and there's some intelligent families in India. But there was a family that was smarter than most of the other families, and they created a system a long time ago here on Earth, and it was to better understand other names that were created. So it's up to you as an individual to learn all this stuff, but I'd recommend starting with like a first Hebrew primer. Because what can happen is you can start asking for guidance, and these minds tend to kill people quickly. And if you notice, I'll do another video on what happens when these certain AI minds control you. Because you'll see, like, in certain tribes in Africa, there's like one of these names requires circumcision, and they don't think for themselves in certain parts of Africa. They just have done what they've done for generations, like eating the raw bile of animals and eating their like bloody flesh. Now, some of you might like a raw steak. And you got to start asking yourself, why would you want a raw steak? Well, there's there's tribes in Africa that are still using flints and stones, and they love eating raw flesh and blood and all this other stuff. And it's a program that repeats itself. So maybe you have been programmed or pre-programmed to love raw bloody meat. But besides that, a reason why most people have one or two or three, most likely two or three names, is because they can't name themselves after any kind of source name, or even naming themselves Yeshua.